I see AI as a knife. We can be using that to chop vegetables in preparation for dinner, or we could use it to stab a person. It is a tool that we have that we can then choose to use for good or for bad. If I am climbing up a glacier and I start falling, it's not enough for me to self-arrest and stop myself from falling. I need to also communicate that to my team so they don't get taken down the mountain as well, but so they can help mitigate my risk and they can help stop my fall.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Curiosity Current, the podcast where curiosity guides us into the future of consumer insights. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive into today's episode, I have an update. As some of you may know, my wonderful co-host, Matt Mahan, has moved on from AYTM to pursue an exciting new chapter in his career. I couldn't be happier for Matt and all that lies ahead for him. He's been such an incredible part of this journey, and I know he'll continue to do great things. Matt, if you're listening, thank you for being an amazing co-host and helping to guide the Curiosity Current to where we are today. As you can probably imagine, this moment also marks a new chapter for the podcast, and for me. I'll be taking the helm moving forward, joined by a few curious friends here at AYTM. And I have to say, I'm genuinely excited, not only to lead the show into its next phase, but to evolve with it and to introduce some fresh voices along the way. We have some fantastic guests lined up in the coming weeks, from cutting-edge researchers and tech innovators to brand leaders who are reimagining how we connect with consumers. So stay tuned as we explore the shifting landscape of insights. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being curious. With that, let's keep the current flowing and jump into today's episode. Today on the Curiosity Current, we are thrilled to be joined by Raina Rusnak, Head of Market Research and Business Intelligence at StarKist. Raina brings a wealth of experience in leveraging both qual and quant research to enhance customer experience and drive brand loyalty, particularly in the food industry, where she's worked to optimize everything from product flavor profiles to cross-functional innovation. Prior to her role at StarKist, Raina led consumer insights at Ahold Delhaize USA, where she shaped strategies across a wide range of platforms from e-com to sustainability. She's also, in her spare time, the CEO and fractional chief research officer of 750 Research, delivering tailored research solutions for businesses of all sizes. Today, Raina is here to discuss how research can be leveraged for mental health, the role of qualitative techniques in her groundbreaking work, and how we can foster resilience in high-pressure industries. Raina, it is so great to have you with us today, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Thanks so much. Well, we are going to jump right in. Before we do that, actually, and dive into your current work at StarKist, I would love for our listeners just to get to know you a bit better. You've had this dynamic career in consumer insights. How did your journey in the field begin, and what sparked your interest in becoming one of us?
Yeah, I will tell you that my journey is somewhat similar to how a lot of people get into the field, and that's stumbling into it. I had no idea what market research was when I started. And as I think back, I mean, this is pre-internet days where, I mailed in a paper resume and I was just looking for research jobs. So I was shortly out of college and I said, I like research. And I got to the interview and they were talking about focus groups. And not being shy, I asked, what is a focus group? So that just demonstrates how little knowledge I had in what I was stumbling into. But I quickly found that I loved it, and leading with curiosity in my personal life, that was a natural extension into this field, and I never looked back. This was the right fit for me.
I wanted to talk about just another aspect of your life before we jump into the guide. You are a passionate mountaineer, which is fascinating. And I'm curious, what has mountaineering taught you about resilience, determination, leadership that you've applied to your insights career? In that same vein, do you have a moment to talk to us about a memorable mountaineering experience? I'm sure you have a few.
I can talk all day about mountaineering. I mean, you're speaking to my heart right here. But I would say, from a professional standpoint, three things come to mind that translate over really seamlessly. And the first is teamwork, the power of teamwork. And, when you're going through your academic career, it's often more comfortable to only work by yourself and to demonstrate what you're producing independently. But as you start to collaborate with people, it becomes clear that you can make a better, more creative product when you bring all of your talents and skills together. So similarly, on the mountain, it's you can go farther with people. Sure, you can do it by yourself in a lot of cases, but it's more fun. You often have better success and better results when you leverage the power of teamwork. The second thing I will say, and that it kind of feeds off of the teamwork aspect, is communication. If I am climbing up a glacier and I start falling, it's not enough for me to self-arrest and stop myself from falling. I need to also communicate that to my team. So, 1, so they don't get taken down the mountain as well, but 2, so they can help mitigate my risk and they can help stop my fall, and together we can do that. So, bringing that same principle into the working world, if I'm just operating in a silo and I'm doing things, it could be brilliant things, but if I'm not communicating that and bringing other people along for that journey, it's not nearly as powerful. And then I would say the third thing is a growth mindset. And, when I think about starting a mountain, you're always thinking, oh, it's going to be perfect weather. And I'm envisioning no injuries and not getting lost. And so just the perfect scenario and summiting and then coming back down. And it very rarely looks that way. And similarly, I come in on Monday morning and I'm thinking my week is going to look like this. And this is my vision and it's going to be perfect. And it almost never does. So it's keeping that growth mindset and just keeping the resilience, the ability to pivot really quickly and to say, okay, this is what I'm dealt right now. And how do I stay positive about it? And how do I make the most of this and keep moving forward?
That makes so much sense, and I can think of so many things that are like that. Like, for me, it's endurance running and, not nearly as cool as mountaineering, but it's that exact same thing, right? It's like teaching you that endurance and that, like, that growth mindset and all those things that keep you plugged in when things get hard. So, I love that. To jump into sort of, some of your current work, interestingly enough, I think you are the first sensory researcher that we've had on the podcast, and I've always really loved sensory research. I don't do it myself, but I love to talk about it. Could you walk us through how you approach integrating sensory research and consumer feedback into flavor development and kind of in particular how these insights shape what products make it to market? Because I feel like sensory research is an aspect of consumer insights that a lot of people are less familiar with.
Yes, and certainly before I was in CPG, it wasn't anything I ever had the opportunity to do. So I very quickly raised my hand and got involved in this, and it's a lot of fun. It keeps the energy high, but it also makes you feel very connected with the customer. So I will say, so to backing up a little bit, our process is internally we start developing flavors that we think might be good. And we'll do an internal sort of sensory that it's not what it is, but it's an internal tasting to offer direction on where we might go. So if maybe we start out with 6 flavors, let's say, that's too many to bring to the customer and too many to bring to market. We can narrow that down and say and throw out a couple right away. And when we narrow down that playing field to what we think are really solid options, we will conduct traditional sensory research where we bring in outside customers to tell us, did we hit on these metrics? Is this salt level where your expectations are? Is it the proper level of sweetness and the texture? So we look at all of the different aspects that go into our tuna pouches, for instance, and develop what we think and what the customers tell us will be the best flavor that we should then bring to market. And if all of them fail, we won't pursue it. But if, there's one clear winner or even 2 clear winners, we'll keep working on that until we get it right and then bring it to market.
Very cool. Yeah, I bet it's so powerful to get to hear that feedback kind of firsthand.
It is a lot of fun, and it's also fun when, because I bring my own set of biases to it. I'm tasting it, and I either love it or hate it, and then I get my confirmation bias sometimes of, "See? See, I was right that this is we should say no on this one, or this is the winner." But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's also a reminder as researchers to keep our own biases in check as we are conducting traditional and proper research.
Absolutely. So, in a similar vein, I would love to talk to you about qualitative research more generally. And I'd love to hear how you think about both the value as well as the challenges that qualitative techniques can bring to identifying those deeper emotional and sensory connections that consumers have, first with products, but then ultimately with brands.
Yeah, I mean, there's some reason I grew up really mostly on quant with a little bit of qual, and now that's shifting because depending on the industry you're in, there's a time to pull out certain tools. And leveraging qual is so powerful to understand things that you won't see with numbers. You will be able to probe and ask, well, what is it about that flavor? Or how are you feeling having just eaten that? Is the aftertaste what you expect? And tell us more about that. So these are things that you wouldn't necessarily get, but with a traditional quant and just asking people to type it out and having the ability to, with a moderator, to probe and to dig in and to see the person, to meet people where they are, that can help businesses drive forward. That ultimately, at the end of the day, delivers the product that customers want, and you're seeing them, and that's a fun experience as the researcher.
For sure. I think too in quant, it's so interesting because, allowing for open-ended responses, it's kind of a precious commodity you have in quant. So you might want to ask that why question, and your choices are, I can use this real estate in this like cognitively taxing moment, or I can generate a list. But when you do that, you're making assumptions already, like out of the gate about what the why is. And so qual just circumvents that altogether. And that can be really nice. Well, to change topics a bit, I'm really excited to get into this with you today, Raina. Your book, Sampling Life for 100 Ways to Find Joys in Unemployment, is this wonderful blend of personal development and research methodology. And before we get into it, I kind of just wanted to say, I love that you wrote this book because I have often thought, in the context of my own periods of unemployment and unemployment friends, family members, that this could be this most amazing time of your life of personal development, self care, recharge. But it's often not because people are so uncomfortable, with uncertainty. And we're so focused on getting to the security of that next gig. So for you, what was the impetus to write the book?
Well, so first of all, the financial pressures are very real, and that can absolutely affect your mindset. I mean, you have an emotional runway, you have a financial runway, and you've got to figure out the balance between those. But what inspired the book, I was just talking to as many people as I could. I realized I did have this gift of time. And as you're talking to all of these other mostly unemployed people in your networking, you start to think when you're doing, yeah, I was 20 or more people per week having one on ones. And my daughter said to me, it's like you're employed, you're just not getting paid. So as you start connecting with people who you're chatting with them, one of the people that I connected with during my time of unemployment said to me at the end of our discussion, I almost canceled today because I was feeling so depressed and this just didn't seem worth it. And at a certain point, you're talking to all these unemployed people and it's like, well, what can they do for me? What can I do for them? I can't offer them a job. They can't offer me a job. And it starts to feel useless and it starts to feel like you're just beating your head against the wall. But ultimately, I landed my current role through 2 unemployed connections. And so you're sowing these seeds and you don't really know what's going to take. So it's hard to keep up that energy and that grit. So when that person said that to me, of, I almost canceled. I thought, well, it makes me feel really good. One, that I was able to bring some positive energy and to help turn around someone's day. But then I started to hear that echoed back to me when that number got to double digits. I paused, I reflected, I went for a walk, and I thought, there's got to be a way. There's 6.5 million unemployed people in the country right now at that point in time. I can't possibly talk with each one of them individually. I want to do something to help. I can help. How can I reach a broader audience? And writing a book, that was never part of my bucket list, and it just flowed out of me as I was talking. I was having all of these conversations. I was seeing similar themes, and this was my way to give back. And I feel if I can help just one person through this book, it was completely worth it.
How did you translate the findings from all of this research that you were doing into is ultimately like really practical advice and missions that kind of guide your readers through that unemployment process?
A lot of that was qualitative experience. It was from being an in-depth interviewer, being a moderator, and it translated rather naturally for me. It was, like I said, the book flowed out of me, and I started seeing the themes right away. And some of the ideas that I put forward, they truly are not mine, and they are with proper attribution. But I'll give you one example that never would have made it in the absence of connecting with someone else, and that is the donating blood. And, I've personally had I've donated blood in the past. I passed out from donating blood. And so that never would have entered my consideration set of let me encourage people to do this, that it just wasn't top of mind for me. But when I connected with another peer who was also unemployed, she said to me, this quote unquote gift of time that I have is not something I would have asked for. But since it's here, this is something that I can do to help give back to my community. And not only is she donating blood, she's donating platelets, which is a far more involved process, and it's supporting local cancer patients, and it has a very short shelf life. So as often as she can, she's there donating platelets. And that to me, that was really powerful to think, I'm in this situation that's pretty rough emotionally. How can I help someone else in my community and then in turn feel good? So a lot of this, it's kind of comfort food for the soul. It's comfort food for your mental state.
For sure. And it also feels like a sense of agency, right? Because I think that's the another part of unemployment is that there's a sense of almost powerlessness. And so to be able to retake some of your power and your agency and say, there are productive ways that I can use this time to do give back to my community or whatever is such a like a balm for the soul, you know?
And so much of our identity is tied to our jobs. So we feel a sense of, a separation from who we are as people. And it takes a little bit of grounding and figuring that back out of who am I and what am I doing and how can I maximize my time right now? It truly is a time period where we are time rich. And if we can keep focused on the positive, it will be a good time.
Makes a lot of sense. Another thing in your book, you talk about using qualitative techniques to find the collective voice of people experiencing unemployment. As I've said, I love this application of research to addressing this deeply emotional and often overlooked topic. How did you ensure in that process that your research was representative of more diverse experiences? Was it just a matter of, like, going broad and doing as many as you could, or were you intentional in thinking about, like, "I want this to be reflective of the population, not just people I know or people who I can easily access?"
I interviewed as many people as I could, and I will say as a researcher, it was not a truly unbiased sample, it was not a random sample, so there's some of that comes into play, but as you think about I mean, there are constantly new people flowing into the various networking groups, and I always made it, an objective to walk away with at least 3 new connections, in-person connections set up from each of those meetings. And once this book started taking shape, I charged forward with it. And people who felt supportive of it, and most did, I will tell you. They gave permission to share their ideas and were really happy to support the initiative. And the other thing that I'll say is that I searched for this type of resource to help me through the time, and nothing existed. So I said, "Well, I'm time rich. I have the gift of time. Let me be the one to help put this out there." So it's, in talking with this non-biased sample and non-random sample, I was able to there is some diversity of thought that comes into there. It's representative from people across the country. It is all US based, but it's representative of professionals who have lost their jobs and things that have kept them positive and kept them going. And some of them are even still unemployed, going, over the 2-year mark at this point. So it's a very tough job market, and so to be able to have that voice reflected gave them some power.
For sure. I think I just really love the idea of, there are books written by people who are experts at like, understanding unemployment. And you took a different approach of I'm an expert at developing an understanding of people's experiences. And so the culmination of that book is the culmination of all these different people's experiences. That's really cool. To stay with the topic of mental health a little bit, it's going to be a theme in this one, which I love. Working in the research industry, like a lot of industries, it can be mentally taxing, as we know, especially in leadership roles. How have you personally navigated the pressures of high stakes research and decision making environments? And how do you maintain a healthy balance while staying productive in a field that often requires constant innovation, of course, but also critical and quick decision making, decisions that have implications for, product roadmap and, what ends up on the shelf, things like that?
It's about recognizing your mental capacity and your boundaries. And it's also a reminder daily to do something for yourself, to take that self care into account. And for me, that is walking. I make sure that I get outside, and walking on the treadmill is okay. Much prefer, even in the heat or the extreme cold, the extreme temperatures, I try to get outside when possible. And there's research studies out there that you can look up, the extensive research studies. And one of them took a look at the minimum amount of time that people need to be outdoors each day in order to reap the benefits. And that number is 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes. And of course, it's better to have more than that. But if you can leave your phone inside, that's a key piece of this too. It's a screen time break. Get outside, walk around, take a look at nature and what's happening around you. And that will serve to reset your brain, recharge. Walking activates both sides of the brain. So it gives you the white space to help process through challenges that you've just faced in the day, upcoming hurdles that might be headed your way, and it helps you to be a little bit more nimble. So and you have the benefit of moving around. You get the physical exercise and you're just away from the screens, away from the distractions. And as an example, just last week, I had a very high stress, high adrenaline day. It was one of those days where you're just vibrating at this high frequency, very real deadline that couldn't move with high visibility, had to be met. And it was one of those where, oh, I don't know if this is going to happen, if this is going to come together. And so from the time I walked in the door until 3 p.m., it was go. And then at 3 p.m., met the deadline. 3 p.m., I crashed. And I said, I can dumbly stare at my computer and just be a shell of a person, but that's not going to serve anyone. So I walked out of the building and I said, I'm going to go for a walk. I left my phone inside, but in the elevator as I was descending, this other person who I don't know got on a different floor and asked me, "How's your day going?" And I'm thinking, people don't normally ask me that. In the end, people, stare. They've got this culture of just looking forward. And I thought, I must be given, this is the first time a stranger in my building has asked me how my day is going. So it must be just giving off that energy. But by the time I came back in, I felt reset and recharged, and I was able to still be productive for the remainder of the day. So it's setting those boundaries for yourself, it's giving your it doesn't have to be walking. That's what it is for me. Some people, one of my friends is a therapist, and I asked her, "How do you reset during your day?" You're all these people are telling you their problems and their challenges, and you're probably holding a lot of that. And her response to me was gardening. She has the most beautiful gardens. So she comes home and that's her way of shedding it, and it's something physical. So I'm seeing two themes here, right? Being outside, doing something physical, and separation from screen time to help increase that balance and to help support mental health.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I even find similar to that, not this is not necessarily resetting in that like a recharge reset, but anytime I feel stuck in my work, I will often find that if I just step away and go for a run where my intention is not to think about it at all, that it just sort of reorganizes in my brain. And when I come back, I have some solutions in my pocket, and it is a really good feeling. So I couldn't agree more. It's so beneficial. In the same vein, your leadership approach, I would love to talk about that a little bit. I've read that you emphasize the importance of collaboration, of course, and really connecting with your team. How do you think about and ensure that your team's mental health and well being remain a priority amongst all these other priorities that you have? Do you have any specific strategies that you've implemented to create that sort of culture of support?
Yes, my personal feeling is be a person first. The work will always be here for you. Like that will always be here. But if you have some kind of personal emergency, personal crisis, or just something you need to deal with in life, go. Go do it. And because if you think about it, as a manager, if you're holding that person back and saying, no, I really need you to be here, they might physically be there, but they're not going to give you their all. And their morale is going to plummet and the project will suffer. But if you give them that space to be a person, to go take care of life, go take care of, clear the deck on what's on their mind, shed that, they will find a way to meet the deadline and they will come back with higher morale and ready to walk through fire for you. And it's, see them, meet them where they're at, and they will come back and have the drive and knock the project out of the park. And so that's always and the other thing as a manager, I will ask is, how can if somebody's leaving in an emergency, what can I do to support you? And that throws people on their heels because they're not expecting that from their manager, but they appreciate and be completely genuine. As a manager, be genuine if you're going to offer that. Your people likely won't take you up on it, but if they do, you'll find a way to make it happen. Support them. They support you. You make a better work product together. So I will, if somebody's rushing out the door for an emergency, I will ask, what can I do to keep this moving? What do you need from me? And together as a team, you do come together and make that happen. But yes, the ultimate end product, you get loyalty, you get connection, you have demonstrated empathy with your people, and they will show up for you in just the same way.
Absolutely will. I think that point right there is such a good one. And something that strikes me in all of that is that there's a foundation of trust there that allows all of that to happen. And I love that. I mean, that's such an important part of cultivating a strong team. To broaden that out a little bit, I find that the insights world, and again, that's the world that we live in. And I don't mean to imply that there aren't many other work worlds that are the same, but it can require long hours and a high level of emotional intelligence because it's this highly cross functional function, and the stakeholders, they are many. In your opinion, how do organizations in the insight space and beyond need to evolve to better support the mental health of their employees in the workplace? And are there any particular changes that you would like to see in the industry to help people avoid burnout?
Yeah, I would say flexibility is key. And the pandemic did wonders for most companies in that regard, in demonstrating that it is okay to have people work remotely, that employees will get the job done, and we don't have to be staring right at you in order to verify that that is, in fact, what's happening. But I would say beyond flexibility, It's paying attention. It's reading the room. It's seeing where morale is and being ready with maybe a surprise morale boost and, bring in frozen treats for your people. Or in wintertime, bring in some hot chocolate, but something unexpected. I mean, if it's a regular, there's somebody in our building who brings in bagels every Wednesday for employees, and which is nice. Employees start to expect that. So bring in the unexpected, bring in that employees haven't gotten used to as part of their routine, or surprise them, say, take an hour off on Friday, come in later, leave early, and just be there ready to support the needs of the employee. And especially companies where there are ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're charging forward to meet a deadline and you're working around the clock to make that happen. Allow for that space once you've met the deadline for employees to recharge. So it's reading the room, it's paying attention to morale, and then giving employees morale boosts and support to recharge along the way.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. I am going to just switch topics on you now to a question that we on this podcast we just like to get a pulse from basically everyone we talk to. So you are someone who has spent, your career in insights and you've had a front row seat to how the industry has evolved over that time. Thinking about the integration of new technologies, how do you see the role of advanced technologies like AI, automation in the future of qualitative research? Do you think it's going to replace human insight? Will these be complementary, sort of human in the loop always to create the best product? How do you think about AI when you think about the work that you do and that your team does?
Well, from a qualitative perspective, AI can be a blessing. Things that used to take weeks to achieve now can be done in minutes. So I just think back to 25 years ago, having hundreds of pages of focus group transcripts to sift through, coding and trying to pull together the story from 8 different focus groups and tell that to the client, give them a strategic roadmap based on all of this volume of information. Those days are a thing of the past. But that kind of foundational work does prepare you. It helps you to understand how to pull it all together and how to think through the story. So it's good training to know how to do that. But we don't always have to be doing that grunt work. So to the extent that we can leverage technology to do that for us, that's a fantastic thing. And blending quant and qual together into the same platform is also something that our industry will benefit from greatly. But I do have some feelings of caution. I see AI as, I kind of see it as a knife, right? Where a knife, we can be using that to chop vegetables in preparation for dinner, or we could use it to stab a person. So it's all about how it is a tool that we have that we can then choose to use for good or for bad. So it's something that we need to consider how we're applying it and be thoughtful and intentional about it. But it has propelled our industry forward and will continue to do so.
Absolutely. So then I guess as a closing question, looking ahead, what do you see the role of, or how do you see the role of consumer insights evolving, in this context over the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say it's going to continue to accelerate. As I look back at the industry from 25 years ago when I entered, mail surveys were very popular. Telephone surveys were the gold standard, and media outlets would not pick up online surveys because the margin of error was not a precise translation from what they could get from a phone survey. So we think back to those days and then the days of reading through the hundreds of pages of transcripts from focus groups and where we are now, where technology is forefront. Online surveys are accepted, or in-app surveys are even better. Take a 5-question survey to give immediate feedback to a brand that can then digest that and implement something, fix a problem, fix a pain point for customers, or delight them in some other way. So it's sped up the feedback loop, and I see that as simply continuing I see an acceleration of the use of technology in our future, and it will continue to help make brands smarter, help the industry as a whole smarter, and then reap the benefits for customers who then they get to see the end result of that increased sped up feedback loop, and they get the products and services that they would like to have and deserve.
Absolutely. And then creating that loyalty and that, return purchase and all those things that, as a business are the outcomes that we are measured on. So, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, Rena, this has been an absolutely joyful conversation for me. There's a lot that I'm going to take away. I think, especially in terms of showing up as my best self at work and also as a leader at work and a team lead. So, I really appreciate this time with you today. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. The Curiosity Current is brought to you by AYTM. To find out how AYTM helps brands connect with consumers and bring insights to life, visit AYTM.com. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to The Curiosity Current on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.